Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier. Now, having looked at the looming showdown between Hitler and Rome, this presentation is going to explain what turned it into an existential crisis for Hitler. I'm going to cover ground, and it all takes place in June 1934, that you might well not have come across. So I think you'll find this presentation both interesting and valuable. Rumours of plots and counterplots were swirling around Berlin. Rumours involving Schleicher, Gregor Strasser and Brüning. And eager to stoke the flames were Göring and Himmler, who themselves wanted rid of Rome. At the beginning of June, Hitler made a last attempt to bring Rome into line. According to Hitler, Rome gave assurances that he would do everything he could to put things right. Nevertheless, to defuse tensions, Hitler ordered the SA to go on leave. It would begin in July and last the month. They would not wear their uniforms, hold parades, or undertake exercises. Then, on June the 7th, Rome announced he was going on sick leave, but as he did so, he fired a defiant warning shot. The SA is and remains the destiny of Germany. He also invited Hitler to meet with himself and the other SA leaders at Bad Wiessee, near Munich, on June the 30th. Hitler accepted the invitation. But a bombshell was dropped by, of all people, Papen. At what would be his last meeting with Hindenburg at his estate in East Prussia, the dying president had vented his disappointment at the way things were going and urged Papen to do something. Papen took him at his word, and in a speech at the University of Marburg laid into Hitler and the creation of a false personality cult, adding that great men are not made by propaganda, but grow out of their actions. And the Nazi movement as a whole was denigrated for their selfishness, lack of character, insincerity, lack of chivalry, and arrogance. He called for an end to the national revolution and the terror, and a return to order and freedom, particularly freedom of the press. Only weaklings suffer no criticism, he said. And he went on to say, it is time to join together in fraternal friendship and respect for all our fellow countrymen, and to silence fanatics. The Nazis tried to suppress reporting of the speech, but Papen had given advance copies to the press, including foreign correspondents, and to diplomats. In a speech to a party rally on the same night as Papen's speech, Hitler referred to such reactionaries as Papen as little worms and dwarfs, and he threatened a fierce response if they allowed criticism to lead to action. Hitler and Papen had their own showdown on June the 20th. Papen said that he had spoken as a trustee for the president and handed Hitler his resignation, adding he would advise Hindenburg of this immediately. Hitler was worried. He promised to lift the ban on reporting Papen's speech, and he promised action against the SA. He asked Papen to defer his resignation until the two of them could speak to Hindenburg together. Papen eventually resigned shortly after the purge. Hitler then flew without Papen to see Hindenburg at his estate, where he found Blomberg already there. Remember, Blomberg was both Minister of Defence and Commander-in-Chief of the Army at the time. He had been summoned by the President to discuss Papen's speech. Hitler was told in no uncertain terms by Blomberg that unless the present state of tension was brought quickly to an end, the president would impose martial law and would hand over the running of the state to the army. The old man was not as finished as Hitler had thought, and he could yet pull the rug from under Hitler. Hitler's hold on power, seemingly secure, no longer seemed so. Hitler returned to Berlin with much to think about, and he faced more prodding from Göring and Himmler to do something. Plans began to be made to acquire evidence that Rome was planning an uprising. There would be no problem if it was fabricated. Both Himmler and Heydrich were involved in this. Lists of politically unreliable people were also drawn up. The army's support was requested and given, and it was decided that June the 30th would be the day they would make their move. The SS were put on alert. But to add to the tension, on June the 25th, General von Fritsch, chief of the army command, put the army on a state of alert, cancelling all leave. Hitler was given clear support, though, when he met with Generals Blomberg and Reichenau, and secured the army's cooperation with what he was planning. The next day, Rome was expelled from the German Officers' Club, a clear message of where the army stood. But just in case it was missed, an article by Blomberg was published the day after in the Völkischer Beobachter, the Nazi Party newspaper, making clear that the army stood behind Hitler. Meanwhile, there was a romantic interlude. Don't worry, it will be short-lived, when Hitler went to a wedding in Essen on June the 28th. The evening after the wedding, Hitler received reports that the SA were planning putches in Berlin and Munich. There were in fact no such plans. There were never any plans to overthrow Hitler, and Hitler never said who he received the reports from. So, the spark for the crisis came not from Hitler or Rome, but from the very top of what I will call the traditional right: Hindenburg, Papen and Blomberg. The traditional right were desperately trying to regain control of things. But just as the political intrigues of the traditional right helped Hitler into power, so they helped him deal with Rome and the crisis within his own party, and so further consolidate his grip on power. A very important argument to make. Now, don't forget there's my website, History Made Easier, that's there to help you too. If you haven't checked it out already, you should. It should prove useful for you. But for now, let me thank you, as I hope I always do, for listening, and wish you the very best of luck with your studies. Cheers.